Today is the 3rd of July 2020 and we're here with the public discussion group with Pageman from Sweden. Take it away.
Right, thank you for that, Peter. So first off, a disclaimer. I am not today, I don't directly represent the Venus Project. I'm a point of contact and I'm going a course to become an educator, but I haven't finished that yet. So you can view this as me tossing these ideas around, but you don't have to, put me as a reference. He said this, okay? So just shortly, please don't promote any other things that you do on the side here. This is not the appropriate place for that. And no conspiracy. That's not what we do here. And regarding volunteering, now I asked you, Matteo, about that. But if you want to continue to know what role you can play in this, then you can contact Peter or you can talk to me later after the session.
Yeah, I just did today. I sent an invitation to Peter. So
yeah, perfect. That's exactly the way it's supposed to go. So, and this place, it is really not a good place for discussion. Discussions take a very long time, and they don't, based on my experience, it's very difficult to have a constructive discussion. The best thing to do, if you feel something is not working, yes, you can toss the idea around or ask me a question, but later on, if you feel that I'm incorrect, I would appreciate it if you would send me something, for example, a video, and say, this person says this. What do you think about that? Because I'm interested. I'm sincerely interested in when you don't agree with this. I want to know, but it's difficult here. So today's, let's see here. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the future. Usually I don't, but it's going to be a mix of this. It's going to be talking about the present and the future. And the way I'm going to talk about it, let's see if our friend jumps in, because he's going to miss the start and then I have to repeat it. Let's give him 30 seconds. Sorry about that, guys. Matteo. Okay, his computer exploded, so let's just continue. And I'm gonna give him a short run if he jumps in. So many years ago, Aristotle, he talked about many things. He sat down and he discussed things, and he used words a lot to try to reach a better understanding regarding the world around him. So when it came to physics, he said he was sitting and thinking about something, and he said, well, if I drop two objects, the heavier one will fall faster than the small one. That sounds logical. Of course it's that way, because at that time people didn't do experiments, and it's a pretty easy experiment to do, but he didn't. He just concluded that this is logical. Something heavier must fall faster. This is him thinking about it without really doing anything. But let's say almost 2,000 years later, a person named Galileo, he said, well, this doesn't sound right. But he did something that we feel is very sane. He didn't discuss it. He didn't go to people, maybe he did, but I'm going to say he didn't. He didn't discuss it. Because if he would have discussed it, they would say, who are you? This is Aristotle, the greatest mind that ever lived. Who are you, Galileo? to even, trying to dispute what he said. So he did something else. As the story goes, he went to the Leaning Tower of, is it Pisa, if I'm not mistaken? And he just dropped a small stone and a big stone with the similar shape. And that's it. And he didn't discuss it with people. He just did the experiment. And then later on, he used the scientific method. That's the point of that. And later on, people, they felt things. Some were happy, some were in denial, and some were, upset with him, how dare you? But sane people, they let go of whatever they thought was reality. And they accepted that it has changed. There's something new now. I didn't think it was possible, but now I see that it is. So in the old world, the world we live in now, words have more of an emphasis than facts or what you can prove. That's why we have so many problems today, because we're.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure, Miguel.
Was what was the outcome of the experiment? Was
okay. So you might not have experience with this, but what do you think will, based on, if you would think about it, Miguel, if you drop a heavy object, let's say a bowling ball, and let's say a big stone and a small stone, which one drops faster?
Logically, I feel like the more heavy one goes
will drop faster.
Okay. But was it the opposite in the experiment?
No. I'm not gonna tell you. I'm gonna show you. Okay. So let's change this. Okay. So let's take a pause here, and I'm gonna give me 1 second. Okay. Okay. So give me a second, and I'm gonna show you a video. And that's a great point. I'm so happy, Miguel, that you asked this, because I was hoping that somebody would. So I'm gonna show you this. Let's take, where is it? Here it is. So you guys see the video? I forgot to put on the sound, but it is not important. The place that this person is where they train astronauts. So what they can do here is they can suck out all the air. Okay, so what they do now, they have sucked all the air out, so there is no friction with the object and air. The only thing that is pulling on it, or the only thing we know of, is gravity. So Miguel, here they have a bowling ball and a feather, and there is no air in the room, and they drop it at the same time. And let's see the result. There's very dramatic music. You guys are missing it. Okay.
Wow.
So, and that's why I'm so happy, Miguel, that maybe you haven't had experience in this question. Or maybe you heard it when you were younger, but because it is not relevant to your life, you forget it. And that's perfectly fine. But this example is that instead of me logically sitting here and say, Miguel, think about it. That's what Aristotle did. He sat and thought about it. But what Galileo did, he did the experiment. And here we don't need to use words, Miguel. You saw the result. Okay. And that's why that way of approaching whatever it is, it's so much better than using words.
But in the experiment with the friction, where he dropped it from the tower, was
it's the same. It's the
It's the
same.
same.
But
Okay.
if he would have dropped a feather,
Yeah.
then there would have been friction. It would be hovering or.
Yeah.
But if these two stones, it doesn't cause enough friction. Maybe if there was a very big distance, it would have caused some friction.
Yeah.
But here, in that short distance, it didn't. And that's how Galileo was able to, take Aristotle and say, in this area, I don't agree. And this is the reason. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so here and there. So in the future, you will, just like in today's society, you use words. In the future that we would like to see, it goes towards proving it, like Galileo did, to understand how things work. And we do that in some areas. For example, we want to see how car crash looks like. They don't discuss it. They take it, they speed it up, and they slam it into a wall to see what happened. Now, if you were raised in this way, to not discuss things, to always look for, to be demonstrated how a person reaches a conclusion, people become very different. For example, if I would tell you I have an elephant and I'm going to squeeze him through a keyhole and he's not going to die, a person of the future doesn't have an attitude in the same way. He doesn't say that's impossible, that will never work. He will just say, can you demonstrate that? Can you show me the methods you're going to use to accomplish that? And I say, it's not finished yet. He will tell me, whenever it's ready, you let me know. I'm interested. But for now, I'm going to put it as not completed. I don't accept it yet. But when you demonstrate it, I'm ready to jump aboard. So the future, if you want to look at people, remember Aristotle. That was the past talking. The future is Galileo demonstrating whatever it is he wants to achieve. And when you start to do that, words like good and bad become very inappropriate. They are too simple. They're great for our type of world. These people are bad, these are good. Sounds great. But when you start to use experiments or there becomes more details. So in the future, when you're describing someone, how is this person? They don't use good and bad. They will bring out a nice chart and say, Pejman, he knows, 97% nursing, pharmacy, this much. This is what we know about him. Is he good or bad? We don't deal with that. We just demonstrate what kind of a person he is. This is what he is. Is it good or bad? We don't know. And there is no more this absolute certainty that this is it. That attitude will cease to exist. To say, like, for example, with gravity as well, you shouldn't have the attitude that gravity, for example, the experiment I showed you, Miguel,
Yeah.
the way we talk will be in this manner, that gravity shows, for example, when he did that experiment, I would like to hear Galileo say that this is what I found out when I dropped 2 stones from that tower. These are the results I got. Will that happen in all the places on Earth? At this time, I don't know. But this is what I found out. So you always leave the door open. You don't say we have found perfection. You know that in the future it might change and you're ready for it. You don't uphold things you found. You're ready to change at a moment only if it's demonstrated. Then you say, I will let go of the past. So people in the future will become different in this manner, that they no longer cling to their culture or their particular upbringing. They will change their values, just like Galileo changed you, Miguel. Now you're going in a new direction towards that way of thinking regarding that subject. And in the future, people will change their values based on those things. So they will radically be different. So when you meet them 1 year from now, it's a different person. He has new experiences and he doesn't cling to his past.
Yeah.
So for you, if you would fall asleep today for many years and you woke up and you want to know, are you in the future that we're talking about? That's what you're looking for. How do they arrive at decisions? Do they still just sit and talk? Then you're still in the past, even if the technology is advanced. Then you know you're still living in the past. But in the future, the way we view it is that there will be less talk and more demonstrations of demonstrating whatever it is they concluded. So Robert, he sent me a question. And the question is, how can we teach compassion and manners in the best and fastest way to really care for each other? I'm going to answer it a simple way first, Robert, and then I'm going to give you a more complex. So if I was somewhere where people didn't know about this is the way I would answer it, is that if you want to have more compassion, where people take care of each other, then you have to create abundance. Today you have scarcity. That is why you cling to your things. But if you would have an abundance, when you go to the library, the books are there, you don't cling to the books. This is my book, let go of that. It's not there, I'll be back next week. So the more abundant things become, the less people cling to their own things. And they become more generous because there is more food on the table. Now, I'm going to make it complex now, Robert, the way I view that question, okay? And this is an exercise, okay? So the first problem with the question is that the word compassion is not defined. So when you say, how can we teach compassion? I don't know what that means. I know that you have a way of thinking about it. And even if I would ask you, to explain it, then I know that Miguel has a different way of looking at it. And Sean has a different way. So it isn't an explanation really that I want. I just want to know for myself when I see that, is that we all have different interpretations of what that means. For some people, it might mean that when somebody is dying, that you hold their hand. Some people might say that is compassion. And some people would say that a person that works for the cure, he's compassionate. So when he sees somebody's dying, he says, I can't hold your hand. I have to go. I have to solve this problem. So a lot of other people survive, and they will say how cold he is. But to us, he is the warm person. This is maximum compassion, that he, instead of just sitting there, he's trying to solve the problem. That's one way of looking at this, okay? So other things is to teach best and fastest way. The future doesn't really sit down in the old way of teaching. For example, I remember I went to my daughter's school and they had a no bully week, and they were going to teach the children not to bully each other. The way the future handles it, it's I'm going to show you this picture, which you will take your kids for your 2.5-year-old, hopefully soon. And when you take them to this kind of place, you don't have to really teach them, how to play, they're trying to design it in a way that children activate when they get there. They just start running around. They might not know how everything works, but the better they become at human engineering, the less you are needed there to assist your child, your boy or a girl. I don't know what it is. Is it a boy or a girl? Or is it
A girl.
a girl? So when you go there
Yeah.
with a girl in the future, you don't have to do anything. It's designed for her to activate. So compassion, if you want to have a compassionate world, you don't teach it. You create a place where it is managed without anybody saying, this is how you pet each other, or you hug another person. In that way, you don't sit and talk. You design that place instead. So let's take the last bit here. To really care for each other. Now, some people might say, mother's love. That's really caring. But we all have our mothers. And even though we grow old, I don't know your experience, but my mother sometimes, she still treats me like I'm 5 years old. And that kind of caring becomes annoying, And she might say, it's because I care for you. And that kind of caring, we don't enjoy that. So just to care for somebody doesn't always mean it's something good. There might be somebody that says, I'm gay. And the mother says, no, I can't accept that. That's because I care for you. You have to marry a boy or a girl the way I would like you. It's because I care for you. So there's a lot of problems with that as well. Now, the Eskimos, when they were starving, they would put their grandma on the ice because there were no solutions. So she needed them to care for her because she was depending on them. She needed them to feel for her. The more sufficient people are, the less they need other people. So I'm going to say something. I just want you to, hopefully it sticks, but you don't have to take it so seriously. I would like to see a world where you don't need people to care for you. I would like to see a world where instead of me holding your hand, you're sufficient enough that you don't need my assistance. I don't have anything to give you because you have everything. And if you fall, a machine, something will pick you up. That's the kind of world I would like to see. And it sounds maybe cruel, but to me, that is real caring. Instead of me having something and you say, please, can I have that? I would like you to just have it. So that's a different way of looking at that. So
Yeah.
That's how we can complicate a very simple question. And we don't always have to. I just do it in these areas to help you, think about it a little bit differently. And these are the reasons why we have so much trouble talking. And now, Robert, you know some of this material, but imagine me trying to tell this to a person that has no idea what this is. It becomes almost impossible. I need so much time to, elaborate on all of these things. But I would use the simple answer if they didn't know what this meant. And I'm not sure they would understand that simple answer as well. So that was the end of this. Now, do you guys have any questions or anything maybe you want to say, or any experiences you had, something you want to share with us? Now is the appropriate time. Matteo, when did you drop in? You missed the beginning, right? When did you drop in? I can't hear you, Matteo. Your mic is off.
Yeah, sorry, my cell phone was run out of battery. So, but yeah, hopefully I can be here.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything they want to share or any question?
I have something.
Yeah.
Okay. In this future world that everybody will have all basic necessities covered, can this, in this new society, how can I put it? Could it be important to pay attention to the spiritual need of these people once that basically all material stuff, let's put it that way, is covered? But what about the spiritual part and yes, knowledge? How do you think that will thrive to that part?
Okay. So if I don't know how spiritual you are, but let's say that there would be a spiritual person that would ask me this question and they don't know anything about this. This is the way I would answer it. I would say that all of those necessities will be provided for you so you can spend your time on the spiritual. That's up to you. Do it, you know. Now you have access to, you know, your food. Now you can sit and meditate all day long if that's what you would like to do. That's the simple answer. The answer that later on they will understand is that the thing I talked about here. It is the scientific method. For example, somebody might say to you, I want to know about the universe, but they don't do any work. They just sit and meditate about it. And the way we view it is that if you, just like Miguel, he didn't know about that experiment. And if he would sit and think about it, he would be like Aristotle. He might draw that conclusion. But it is when he gets off his ass and stands up and drops two objects, that's where he will learn more. So that's the way we view it. That spiritual world will disappear. It will become very less because now people have ways of finding things out and they work towards that instead of sitting and just thinking about it. But there won't be, just to give you it, when you have abundance and you have a system that runs by itself and somebody wants to sit and meditate for 10 years, that's not a problem. But to us, it becomes very highly doubtful that somebody would do that because they haven't been raised to do that. When they went to school, they were taught all of these things. If you want to find out, this is the methods for it. And they will explore that.
Ideally, the education system would present all forms of spirituality, religion equally and provide as much data as possible. And then the person won't be railroaded or biased into a line of thinking. They will have more objective understanding and likely from that arrive at similar mindsets that we have here today.
Yeah. So the difficulty with that question is that we don't know what timeline you're asking. In the transition, it's different. far into the future, they will just say, when it becomes so irrelevant, they will just say people used to think that the stars were a sheet with holes in it and light was coming through it. And that's it. And you know, they don't go into it as deeply. But in the beginning, if you have a lot of religious people, their children will be exposed to a lot of religion and say, these people think this, these people thought that. And they give them 1,000 different ways. But later on, it's just not relevant anymore. When you want to accomplish things, that's the way to do it. That's what the way we think will be.
Agreed and understood.
All right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So let me turn this off. All right.
Can I
guys.
ask something
Yeah.
or?
Yeah, sure. Anything.
Um, I was paying attention about how you said something that I liked, which was how much spiritual is the person, and I think that's a very interesting and important question, because when, for example, one is explaining this way of thinking, sometimes you, I don't know how to put it, like go out of the limits. For example, a person, a religious person can understand the first example and the second example that you give to them, but maybe I took from my experience, maybe sometimes I tell another example and then I miss the person. So the question is, how do you know which tools are available in order to know better the limits of what examples should I give to the person, and what examples aren't good for a particular individual?
So do you mean that if somebody asked that, how would you give an appropriate answer to that?
Yeah.
Well, that's a very difficult thing. The best way is to ask a lot of questions before you answer something. So the better you know the person, the more you will know how much they can handle. And sometimes the question is phrased in a way that they're not really asking a question. They just want it confirmed. You see, if I would see somebody that looks very spiritual in their way they're dressed, and they would ask that question, I don't think they want to ask me, you know, should I at this time, you know, change my lifestyle and, change my mindset to be prepared for the future? I don't think they're asking that. They want to confirm, will my lifestyle be in the future? And it will be if they need that. If you have an abundant world, yes, if you need that, continue doing that, because we don't need everybody to participate. So that's, I would say, you can't be super honest and just say whatever is in your mind. That is not a good way of communicating. If you see that the person can't handle it, but if you think the person can handle it, I would say it is the best way to talk to other people, to be as honest as you can be, or they allow you to be. So you will make many mistakes when explaining this, and I've done a million mistakes. It's a very difficult to say exactly this is the recipe. All of us have listened to Jacque Fresco. The way he put it was appropriate for us. But if you would have heard it maybe when you were 15 or 12 or 10, it wouldn't make sense to you. It came at the appropriate time for you to say, I'm going to continue listening to this material. And later on, it might become inappropriate. And you say, I don't have time for that. And that's the right. That's the right. Then you shouldn't do that. So it changes. This isn't fixed. The answer isn't, a fixed answer for all time. Okay. Do you talk to a lot of people, Matteo? Or have you tried it?
In the beginning, I talked to my family, but I was like, when I look back, I was very dogmatic because it kind of makes sense to me, but I didn't know, I had no way to argument the affirmations that I was hearing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then in the university, I made an exposition of the Venus project. Yeah, and
how did that
that's
go?
what, we showed there the I think was Paradise or Oblivion in the context of strikes that were going to in my country, and the people were like in general, I believe they didn't like it that much. It was maybe too radical. Maybe they saw it too mechanistic. They took it in that way. That was my feeling. And talking with them, that's what I think. Yeah.
Which country were you? Do you live?
Colombia.
Colombia. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know how you felt then, when we talk to other people, especially in the beginning, we hope that they will understand, and that we might get a little bit discouraged when they look at you as an alien, like, what is this? But what will happen to you, the more you learn about this, the less you will depend on their let's say that I want to say confirmation, or that they understand what you're talking about. Your job is not to make them, accept everything. Your job is just to present and see how it goes. Just like Galileo did. Yeah, were you with us with the experiment of Galileo that I showed? No, I think you missed that.
No,
Or
but
for-
I heard that you were saying about the throwing the rocks.
Yeah. So what he did is that he knew something, and then you just present it, and they say impossible. You say, okay, if that's the way you feel about it. But you're no longer, if you seek their approval, then you're going to get into trouble with this subject, because you're not going to get approval. Very few people, if you present it to 1,000 people, maybe 2 people will say, sounds great. But they're not going to continue listening to the material. Very few people say, great, can I learn more? And really go into it. That's very few people that do it. Did you want to say something, David?
Yes, related exactly to the last part, I want to add something that maybe becomes a question. What about, I don't know if any of the other participants can feel this or have notion. What about if most of this, let's say 1,000 people in a meeting, have this feeling of search, they need something new, that maybe what we present, when I say we, involved in the Venus project can fulfill that. In my case, personally, I was in a search for something beyond all of the material world, money, job deceptions, and all of that. And I found this. So, you know where I'm going.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we do this. That's why, but the attitude I want to put in your pocket that you bring with you is that remember that most people have been brought up not to understand this subject. They have been brought up to keep the normal things going. And almost everything you talk about, they have been brought up to say, sounds, too cold, sounds very scientific, where's the human aspect of it? They can't see the humanity in it. So, it's too centralized. Where's the freedom? So you get into trouble. And they must be really, really searching or have a really open attitude towards new ideas. But the more you learn, the less you're going to depend. You just go there and you present. And if somebody contacts you, you say, great. Sean?
I think you touched on it and a couple other people touched on it, so I'm going to speak about it. And that is that if there were the resources and capabilities, everything that you've seen of the Venus Project would have already been made in every language, in every cultural backdrop, with the cultural iconography in the background, with the actors being from that culture, so that the information will land the best way it can. We do not have those resources, capabilities, So the people around the world are essentially, as far as I see it, tasked with translating what you have already translated in your head, retranslating that to those around you. And that's the tough part, because we don't necessarily, we have the LTI team for the last 10 years. They've been doing very well, but as you can see, it still doesn't necessarily work just translating a video or book or a audio lecture or anything like that. It takes more than that. So we have to take the people around the world in, we have to train them up a little bit more, and then hopefully send them back out there so they can do that double task, which is quite tough to do. And so that's tough. Ideally, we would be able to completely measure the person we're speaking to and completely respond to them most efficiently so that they can absorb the information. That is a very tough task. It is accomplishable. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah. I always think about that when I see somebody talking about racism. You don't want to have a black person standing and talking about racism. You want a real redneck. And he says, racism isn't good. Because that goes through a big, real redneck, which they can, if you're talking to that audience, that's what you want. And that's what we want. We want people that they feel identification with, speaking their language, their manners, and they're presenting this material in a way that they know their culture better. And I think Jacque used to say this when he went to different countries. He would begin his lectures by saying something in their language, just to give them a little bit of identification. So that's why, we're trying to get everybody, people from all around the world to present this material. So.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
Is somebody speaking?
I was, you remind me of something. I don't know, Sean? I believe is your name? Yeah. You were saying that responding in a good manner to the people You made me think about, for example, using uh, artificial intelligence or something like that. Yeah, artificial intelligence in order to, for example, I don't know how it would sound, but um, like classifying a bit the person in order to make recommendations of the kind of things that maybe are better and they are ready to understand. I When you asked me about if I was presenting I presented the Venus project. I forgot to say that I we and a friend did an exposition in the Venus project in a group of ornithology, and I believe that in the beginning was doing okay because I knew that they liked a lot about birds, so I tried to give examples and my friend also. But then we put a video about the Venus project, and they reacted a bit like uh, they didn't like it too much. They thought that maybe it was too mechanistic and too only technology and not enough nature and all of that sort of things. And it made me realize that uh, in the different countries that we are in, we have we have the advantage that we know something about the other person. In this case, about the ornithology group. So maybe that wasn't the best way to explain the Venus project. So something like uh, grabbing data in order to like use AI in order to extract relevant information and relevant advices in order to give to the people could be a good thing. Um, and also, of course, recopilate data about I don't know, I was just
Yeah.
thinking about it.
So the beginning, that's exactly how you would like to do it. You find the subject they're interested in and you try to tie it in. But that becomes difficult if you show a video. Was it the whole 1.5 hour? Then they become disconnected. So I remember I went and talked to an organization here in Sweden, and these were all people around 60, 70, 80-year old, and they were all like super rich, like top here in Sweden. This is their fun club. And what they do is that they fund, here I'm going to show the picture, his on polio vaccine. So that's what they do, polio vaccine. So when I did my lecture, I used Jonas Salk, which created the vaccine. And he said that, they asked him, are you going to patent this? And he said, no, this is for humanity. So I took that. What they're doing. Jonas Salk said this, not me. He said this, because who the fuck am I? They don't identify with me. So I use Jonas. I said, if he would have patented this, then your work would have become more difficult. So, and that's the way I transitioned into money isn't everything, and how we can accomplish so much more, whatever. So, and that's what you have to do. If you're going to present to a group, you have to, just like when you ask the spiritual person a lot of questions, then you try to Google a lot of information about this particular group. How do they view the world? And the more you learn about the Venus project, the more you can make the connections. And you say, oh, I'm going to take this and I'm going to talk about that. And they're hopefully going to see the connection. So.
And you can tell everybody that it actually has almost nothing to do with technology.
Yeah.
It really doesn't.
No.
Jacque made these models in response to people saying, "What are you talking about? Show us." And this was in the 50s and 60s. So he made the models and he drew all the ideas up instead of just speaking about them. But now most people just react to the models, whereas that isn't even the core of it. And so, we want to Roxanne and the Venus Project uses them to incentivize, they're amazing. Jacque has 4,000 to 6,000 of them, to different designs they just scratched. But anyway, one of the main answers we can answer that if it's too technical for people is that it's actually not technical at all. It just so happens that the values that we're trying to get across to people lead people to use things much more efficiently, and ecologically and technically. So these are, if you approach somebody who's an engineer and instill in them the resource-based economy values, I think they're going to design basically what Jacque designed. They're inevitabilities because we're constrained by nature, the resources we have. So Jacque kind of chose concrete, which is an abundant resource, So I'm not going to keep going into that, but some people can know that this is not technical at all. It's achievable through technology, but it doesn't have to be that. It's more value-based. It's mostly value-based.
Okay.
That's how we lure them in, just like Sean said. That's what they see. There's a clip where somebody from BBC comes there, and he's talking to Roxanne, and he's been on a tour. And at the end of the interview, he says, well, it seems that there is something more than just the cities. And Roxanne is like, yes, there's that's the real thing, not this. This is for your eyes to, pull you in. But then there's a lifetime of learning of what it's really about.
Yeah, the concepts in the 70s and 80s lectures. And I'm not sure that Jacque talks about anything like that. Any buildings or anything in any of those. I can't attest to it. I can't remember.
There's one. He just talks about methods of construction. I remember just a simple one. He was talking about how to construct. And he was talking about efficiency. And he says, if you build separate buildings, then you need 4 walls. But if you push them together, then you don't need 2 walls. And then you're saving 8 walls because they use the other walls because the building is next to it on the other side. Those simple ideas. But here he really, just like Sean said, people said, show us what you're talking about. And at that time, they said, this is too technical it's too advanced. And nowadays, people look at it and say, well, it seems that it's falling behind. So they won't be said it is too technical or it's too old. It's too 70s style. But that's not the important thing. It is the thinking about it, how the method of how he reached these conclusions, which we're trying to get out. Those are more relevant than exactly, this is how it's going to look exactly.
So
Okay.
I can add the following, that in most of the essence could be that try to change people's mindset, okay, towards the Venus Project proposal. That goes really beyond buildings, cities, and boats and all of that. Of course, there is much more of that, but the essence is change of mindset, I think, or part of it.
No, that's all of it. To change the way we look at things, look at ourselves and how we look at other people. So that's the real journey here. But the real change will come, like the example I gave with Robert taking his kid to that playground. The real change comes when the environment starts to change. Then you don't need to sit down with everybody and change their mind. The environment is going to change them. For example, not being violent or stealing because there's an abundance. So you don't need to sit there and say, don't steal. They steal something, you say, do you want 10 more of those? Because we have 1 million over here. You can take them all if you want. It's no problem. Then the person stops that behavior.
I've come up with a pretty good soundbite when I talk to a new one about the Venus project, which seems to plant the seed of curiosity.
Yeah.
I usually say, like, for example, to a spiritual person, well, I'm very interested in a organization called the Venus Project, who promotes a new way of thinking about technology, society, etc. And initially, at least, it seems to give most people some kind of, like, they want to know more often than how I used to talk to other people about it before.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I haven't found a good way of presenting it to a random person. But that's good. Just try things out and see what you find. All right. Any more questions?
Because I actually used it with the spiritual person once, and I could see it, like, well, he became very interested fast in what I was talking about, but we're not speaking for a long time. But
yeah, these are the difficulties, because somebody can seem very sincere.
Yeah.
The question is, are they gonna look into it after the conversation?
Of course, yeah, that's true.
That's what we would like.
Yeah.
To find out, did it really work, or did they just for that moment?
It's true.
All right. Anybody want to say last thing or a question or anything? No. Daniel, did you say anything? I can't hear you.
I just realized I was off, so I tuned it on. I was on mute. To tie in with everyone, when I first heard this, I read tons as much as I could. I became a fan right away because I understood the idea of, if you change the environment, you change behavior. And if you create, like what Jacque created, it's going to have a profound effect on human beings and how we interact, and it'll take us to the next level in our civilization. We're really stuck. We're still at war. We're still at stealing, and we're still these very basic animalistic behaviors. They should be gone by now. So I was really excited to talk with people and share it to people, and it seems like, unless for someone to hear what you got to say, people tell me it's communist, you're utopian, it'll never happen, robots will take over. They watch movies like The Terminator and think it's going to be Skynet and the robots are going to take over. They have such little understanding that machines don't have feelings or consciousness. I mean, they hear the idea of AI and they don't understand AI is not becoming a human being. It's being able to process information. So in a nutshell, I've got really frustrated trying to tell people. Just for so many reasons, their minds are closed. And what you were saying, Pejman, is it?
Yeah,
Pejman.
that's right.
Like, I'm trying to be the Galileo at this point. I'm trying to do things that are resource-based economy like producing my own food. Using a vertical growing system, timers and stuff like that, technological advancements where I could grow my own food. Hopefully I could learn how to produce my own energy so I could do that too. That's given me a little more peace, because now I'm like trying to work towards it instead of just trying to tell people. And like you were saying, seeking validation, this is what I believe, this is what I'm going to go for, and I'm going to try and accomplish it. Sometimes I'll throw the idea out there. I'll say a Democrat sucks, a Republican blows. I believe in the Venus Project. And then maybe people will ask me then, but then I just don't push it anymore because it was like ramming my head into a brick wall. So I'm trying to be the Galileo at this point, trying to figure out how I can do it in my own world, and then I could actually show people. Of course, I'm not tearing down linear cities at this point and building round ones, you know, but, you know, one step at a time.
Yeah,
So that's it. That's all I wanted to share.
that's great. Thank you. If you guys want to do it, the way I feel works best is to hold a lecture somehow. Like, don't just try to engage with a random person, you know. It's usually not the appropriate time, or you need a lot of room to talk. You know, you need to have an hour to say something. So the way I feel is that to create something like this, and then you have they have come there, you have put a, you know, we're going to be talking about this, and then it's appropriate. And if it comes one person or 10 people, they know why they're there to talk about a particular thing, and then that gives you more room to discuss these ideas. Okay. At the same time, we have some restrictions. We would like you to, you know, it's better to learn a lot more than to, I didn't do that. I just started. But at this time, you know, because there are a lot of people that don't really grasp the idea. And when they start to talk, they might say a lot of things that are not correct the way the Venus Project would like you to present it.
The naive can do more damage than good.
Yes, that's the problem. Usually people that stick, you know, for many years are people that get questions that they can't answer, and they say, I'm going to look into it for themselves. You know, how can I improve this? When they tell me it sounds like communism, what am I going to say? Not to put them down, but to get the point across. So you have to, you know, that's what happens. You have to practice on your own time, and then you're going to try it again. And later on, you will find out that it's almost always the same questions. So you know, there isn't a million different questions. A person that hasn't been exposed to it will ask almost always the same questions. You know, what about individuality? It sounds like communism. Like, I've heard that a million times, Daniel. So after a while you learn, and then you improve on how am I going to answer this. Okay. All right, guys.
I hear that one too.
You hear that one as well, all right?
All the
Same
time.
questions. Always same
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, always.
Okay, guys. I was thinking about ending it. And if you have any questions, or does anybody have a topic they would like me to talk about 2 weeks from now? Is there anything particular you would like me to talk about?
So payment, is it bi-weekly always?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks?
Weekly is too rough on me.
Bi-weekly. Yes.
Oh, bi-weekly. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just catch you every once in a while on Facebook, and I say, okay, they're meeting. I'll jump in.
Great. I'm gonna send you a link every time instead, so you don't miss it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. If you guys have any requests, just send them to me. And those are always more fun, you know, if there's a particular topic you want me to talk about, or any questions. Questions are great, and it gives me a time to, you know, put a good presentation, hopefully. Okay, so thank you for today, and see you in 2 weeks, hopefully.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Good to talk to everyone. Yeah, peace. Thanks, Jen.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Goodbye, guys.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Take care.
Peace, everyone. Yeah, have a great day. Stay away from the coronavirus.
Will do.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Corona beer, okay. Coronavirus, no. Right?